world is a dream, right? Life is but a dream. We are but a dream. We live inside a dream. But who is the dreamer? Besides all of the time, there is no time that feels more hazy to me. It feels more strange than in the week following Christmas before New Year's. Now, I could look into that more, but rather than interrogate that further, rather than attempt to find a more healthy way to understand why this period makes me feel that way, instead, here are a bunch of film reviews. The Boys in the Boat. First thing I have to say, as a Washington State native, I found the lack of trees or basically anything of significance to the area in this movie a little bit embarrassing, and in many ways indicative of the problems with this film for me. I know that the movie takes place almost 90 years ago. However, the evergreen trees of Washington State were certainly around 90 years ago, not to mention the Puget Sound or any of the other natural landmarks of the area. This film depicts Seattle as this empty, stretching wasteland that happens to be next to a lake that, by the way, ends up looking pretty much identical to Germany in later scenes in the movie. And it just feels indicative of this laziness of this movie that, for me, made the whole thing feel like kind of a half-considered shrug. Look, I know a lot of people who have read and enjoyed the book a lot, and maybe that makes the movie a little more enjoyable. I want to emphasize I haven't read the book, and so nothing I'm saying here is meant to criticize the book. However, this film doesn't seem to grasp any message, nor tell us anything even significant about why the boys in the boat were even, good or important. Why should we even be telling this story? The whole thing feels like a half-attempted pantomime of better period films, better sports films, and the political context that only pops up at the last, 20 minutes is kind of laughable. And where were the trees? The color purple. Now, it doesn't particularly matter what I have to say about this one. However, as I noted in my Letterboxd review, I have been a bit skeptical about this ever since I heard there was a Broadway musical. I wasn't confident that Broadway would be able to actually reckon with the depth of pain that this story goes to, and I was worried things would end up feeling underconsidered at best and oversimplified, potentially offensive at worst. I've seen Spielberg's movie, and it has its positives, yet also it has its drawbacks. That being said, the first thing I think this film, The Color Purple, gets right is an assumption on the part of the filmmakers that most of the audience watching this movie is likely already quite familiar with historical context. Even if one might not be acquainted with the intricacies and specifics of the story of The Color Purple, the history has been told in terms of pain quite frequently. But this new film takes another goal, grabbing the loose structure of the story as bones upon which to focus on liberation and empowerment. The tragedy of the story and the barbarity of the story still remain, yet what also remains is resilience, power, and beauty. The performances of this film are literally all fantastic, from Fantasia at its head to Colman Domingo. I don't think the film is perfect from a craft perspective, or even socially necessarily, but I do think it gets an awful lot right, and I felt very moved by it. The Iron Claw. I was never very athletic when I was younger. Yet, as is almost inevitable for a young boy, I still ran into all kinds of sport-based families. Families who spent their Saturdays and Sundays at parks and in gyms, and whose gaggle of children, so often boys, were passionate or perhaps required to maintain a consistent work ethic in whatever sport was being pursued by this family. I was fortunate, at least, to not grow up in one of these, though it seemed they were never too far away. And I always felt uncomfortable around these groups. There was a tacit pressure that seemed to simmer below the surface everywhere and seep out like a fog from around It wasn't that there was no love in these homes, but all that love was being funneled into a single purpose. Now, I did not know any families as dedicated to sport and glory as the Von Erichs, families where that simmering gradually turned up until it began to crack and boil every last member, where the masculinity became more than just a prison, but a weapon, a blunt object, a bulldozer. Sure, I didn't know anyone exactly like that, but sitting in the space of the Iron Claw, I recognized it immediately. I've met these brothers, I've met this mother, I've met this father. The Iron Claw certainly owes a decent amount of cinematic legacy to Scorsese and to a number of other films about masculinity. Yet there is another thing it's looking at, something all the more at once tender, yet still sharp and cutting. Zac Efron gives a performance I did not believe was possible for him, while at long last, a Rush song is used to actually elicit an emotion. Ferrari. Now here we have to grab two contradictory influences, a story from the Bible and a theory from the Soviets. For Michael Mann's new film is indeed biblical in scope, even as it is Soviet in construction. Ferrari is of course billed to some extent as a passion project, but if not, then as a race car picture. Mann is famous for action, and of course that is what is expected, and at some level delivered. Yet even more so, Ferrari is an exercise in montage. This is a film of juxtaposing images, flowing in tandem, that once set in motion, build to one inevitable moment. This is also a film of masculinity, but it is also a film of misplaced immortality. This is the film of a man who tried to build a tower, or rather a race car, that would get him all the way to heaven. A man whose life was a swirling mess, and who thought he might avoid the consequences of every misplaced action. This is a film about what happens when the tower, quite literally, crashes down. Penelope Cruz anchors a film that features a quietly unhinged Adam Driver, well, sort of quiet. Don't look for story here. This is about image, sound, and edit. People have complained about some bumps here or there, but in my opinion, when taken as a full montage, these gripes iron out easily, and the ultimate feeling of the picture is a little staggering. I mean, from the moment they cut from a Catholic mass to the test track, they had me. Poor Things. Now, I dare you to find an end of the year list that's going to leave this film off, and alas, I'm with them. What a wonderful movie. I need to go back and revisit other Lanthimos films, as I expect to find them better than I might have rated them on Letterboxd. He's a visual grab bag, one who builds cohesion out of a collection of techniques and styles. Yet, what we have here with Poor Things must be his most cohesive and moving piece yet, featuring what might have to be Emma Stone's single best performance. Much has already been said here, and much more will be, I'm sure. But even with the amazing design, the beautiful music, and the array of supporting acting from especially Mark Ruffalo and Willem Dafoe, there would be no movie without Emma Stone. And so it follows that with her genuinely unbelievable, life-spanning, full-bodied performance, this film is simply transportive. It's a fairy tale grounded in emotional truth, one following a simple formula just in a way that we've never quite seen before. Think of George Méliès, think of Dr. Seuss, think of Salvador Dali, but mostly think of Yorgos Lanthimos and think of Emma Stone. Please subscribe to my channel and follow me on Letterboxd. I will be trying to post more often, so you'll probably see more videos than what you've already been seeing. And, you know, it's way cooler when you follow and like and stuff like that. Yeah.